All right, I am going to pull up a presentation. And can folks let me, this is actually the first time I realize, maybe not the best scenario, but this is the first time I've used the present in Teams function from PowerPoint. So can folks let me know if it should be loading and coming through in just a second? Let me
It looks
know
correct.
if you can see it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, hopefully everybody is here for the Youth Transitions external portal training and demo. That's what I'm here for. So my name is Gabe Kiefer. I am a business analyst. I work for the Department of Human Services. I primarily work on the team that supports the ORCIDS application, which is the primary application used by ODHS, child welfare. And then on the meeting today are Kelly Brzezinski and her team from the Youth Transitions group as well. You've got my contact information there. I'll share it out again at the end of the meeting, but just want to put that out there. So our agenda for today, we've got about 75 minutes scheduled for the meeting. We may or may not need all of that time. We'll see how it goes. But the purpose the purpose of the session is to orient you to the new external portal that we'll be implementing very soon. So we'll talk about, why are we doing this? We'll talk about the scope of what it is that we're implementing and the approach that we've taken to get to this point so far. We'll spend the majority of the time in the session actually doing the demonstration of the portal and walking through the features and the workflows that can be completed. And then we'll talk a little bit about what needs to happen day one. So the day that we implement the portal, what are some of the actions that need to occur both on the youth transition side and then also on the for the folks who work for the external vendor community. We'll talk, and then we'll also just discuss briefly what's our timeline to implement, and we'll wrap up. That's the agenda. Does anybody have any questions before I dive in? All right, still got a couple of folks joining us. I'm going to let them in. Okay. All right, awesome. So we'll move on. So why are we doing this? Project purpose. What's the, gosh, this seems like a big change. This is primarily about trying to make this process more streamlined, more efficient, not only for the youth transitions team on the ODH, but also for, ideally, for the vendor community. And it's also about really trying to take a process that right now features a lot of inefficiency and, quite frankly, a lot of sort of simple data quality errors that cause the monthly MSPR documentation to need to be sent back for correction, and really trying to bring that forward and modernize it so that as external vendors, as coaches, you're really able to focus on the critical aspects, right, which are the actual engagement with the youth that we're trying to serve, the young people that we're trying to serve. And especially when you're documenting your monthly activities, making sure that you're able to focus on your narrative and how those monthly activities are in alignment with the goals for the youth and how they are serving that youth. And it's less about making sure things like, oh, did I code it the right way as an type of MSPR, or did I get my minutes input correctly, and all of those things that you may be worrying about currently with the temporary process that we have in place with the Excel document. So it's about efficiency. It's about reducing simple errors to hopefully much more frequently have scenarios where you document the activities you submit, and ODHS, the Youth Transition Team, is able to validate and approve your MSPR the first time, doesn't have to send anything back. We're also looking through the portal to be able to give not only coaches, but administrators, supervisors, folks who are running these programs, give them an opportunity to kind of have a holistic view of the data for all of the youth that are currently being served by their program. Our approach, I'm sure Kelly has been talking to you. I actually did a little demo for this community last fall, I believe, as we were kind of looking to start to build out this portal, and we've been talking about this coming for a while. We try to use within ODHS, as we build software, we try and use an iterative approach, meaning we take what could be a larger project and we try and break it into smaller pieces that can be implemented and provide value to the users sooner. And so in this project, as an example, we started with our current temporary process where we're using the Excel MSPR sheets about 18 months ago. We made some additional, and we also, at the same time, we implemented a portal for the YT team internally on the admin side. We also then made some additional enhancements to that portal for the YT team in June of 2024. And then we started the architectural work of actually developing our external portal. And part of the reason that this has taken, I think, admittedly, a bit longer than we hoped, this project to get to this point, which is where we find ourselves now, where we're ready to implement this external portal, is that this is the first portal that ODHS has developed, the first application we've developed that is in the cloud. So it's not hosted on our servers here in Oregon. And it's also our first external application where we're going to have staff who are not ODHS staff who are logging into it. So that's presented some technical challenges that had to be overcome. And we're confident at this point that we've done that. And now we're ready to move this forward. So what's included? What's in scope for this portal, this external portal? So we're going to be adding the portal. Part of that is implementing MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication. We're all familiar with that from checking our bank account, lots of other different accounts. You'll get a code in addition to entering your username and password when you're logging into the portal. The primary focus for the external portal is that the external vendor community can complete the entire workflow of submitting the monthly documentation, the MSPR. And then we can also use as I'll demonstrate in just a little bit, there are multiple views of that data that will be possible within the portal. And so kind of making that accessible to you. And then also allowing folks who are vendor administrators the ability to manage and update their own staff, their coaching staff. So that's kind of our scope. Towards the end of the presentation, I'll also talk a little bit about what are some of the items that we're looking at adding in our next release coming up here, hopefully in a couple of months. I also just want to mention, we're not going to get too technical, but I just want to mention, because I think it is important for people to kind of visualize it a little bit. I'm a visual person, and to me, it always kind of helps to think about it. So one of the things that we'll talk a little bit about today with the portal is data syncing. And what I mean by that is that it is set in effect with this deployment, we have sort of three separate data stores where we're accessing or caching data behind the scenes as you work. And so we have within OrCids, which is our primary child welfare application, of course, we keep most of our data there within ODHS. Then we have the administrative portal, which I mentioned earlier, that's already been implemented. And now we're adding the external portal. And the external portal is actually, again, beyond outside of the state firewall, and it's in the cloud. And so there are some additional security requirements and data requirements that come with that. So one thing I do want to point out just before we get into the demo is that the time required for data sync. And so between, as we can kind of see here in the graphic, between OrCids, the primary system, and the admin portal, there's an immediate data sync. But between the administrative portal and the external portal, for certain types of data, there can be a delay because there is a sync process that runs on the hour. So when in a moment when I'm talking about adding youth when a vendor says, hey, we've got this young person that we're going to work with, and they need to be added on the youth transition side so that they show up in the external portal so you can start documenting your monthly activities. it's an example of a situation where, depending on the hour, depending on the where within the hour the data is added, sometimes there can be a delay of up to 60 minutes for that data to show up. However, with the MSPR data, and again, we'll look at examples of this in just a moment in the demo, with the MSPR data, it's an immediate sync. So what we predict is that the vast majority of the time, you really won't notice a difference when you make adjustments to the MSPRs. Those will immediately be apparent to the YT staff on their side, and when they make updates, it'll immediately be apparent to you on your side. But with certain types of transactions, there may be a bit of a delay. We wanted to kind of call that out a little bit for you. All right, so we're just about ready for our demo. Couple of things I wanted to make a note. We are converting all of the data that has been submitted to date, right, on those Excel spreadsheets. We've been taking that data and uploading it into the administrative portal. We are converting that data. So when this platform goes live very soon, the first time you log in, you will be seeing all of the data to date from the beginning of the temporary process, which is January 2024. Served by the agency, right? So it won't be a matter of like, first day I log in, you got to start adding every kid. All those youth should be there, and it would just be youth who have not yet had an MSPR submitted under the temporary process that we'll need to make sure that we get added. So just to put that out there. The other thing I would note is that we've got we have tested the heck out of this with Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome browsers, and we have tested it a bit less with Apple Safari and Firefox browsers. We believe it will work, or we are confident it will work with any modern browser, but we have tested the most with Microsoft Edge and Google Chrome, and we probably would recommend those browsers. So if for example, once this goes live, if you find that, gosh, it's just really not working for me very well, I might suggest to download Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. The other thing to note, with the intention is that we are submitting one MSPR per youth per month with this portal. And I just wanted to clarify that, make sure that was very clear. The intention is not, for example, to submit every time you have a contact with the youth and then submit it through the portal. It's to create an MSPR. It can be in a pending state all month. I made a phone call this day. I sent them a text message this day. They came in for a group this day. At the end of the month, then we're submitting all of those activities. All right, I'll pop out of here for a second. And I'm going to pop back over to my demo. I'm going to share my screen. While I'm doing that, are there any questions from anybody in the audience? Okay, and I will say, actually, let me do this real quick. I'm going to get this up on my screen so that I can see in case somebody has their hand up. Just in case I can't see it, though, please feel free to just come off of mute and shout at me. Or perhaps I can ask one of the folks on the YT side, if you see a hand up, just feel free to say, hey, Gabe, there's a question. You didn't see it.
I got it, Gabe.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. All right. So we are going to start with the demo. We're going to start here. I'm actually going to start on the internal portal, the YT portal. And for the purpose of I'm going to show you what this looks like on the YT side to add somebody for access. So first, we're just going to start with access. How do I even get into this thing, right? So on day one, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by adding there are essentially two roles that are available in the external portal. There's a vendor administrator role and there's a coach role. The only real difference, and I'll demo it to you in just a minute when we get into the external portal, is that there's one additional tab, one additional view that's available for the vendor administrators, and that's to manage and add new coaches. So the first step on day one will be to add those vendor administrators. They'll get logged in, and then they can begin adding their own coaches. That's our process. So in order to do that, and I'm going to show you these steps again here in the admin portal. It's the exact same process within the external portal if you're a vendor administrator in terms of adding your own coaches. So I'm going to pull up. And again, if it's not obvious to everyone, anything we're looking at today is mock data. Of course, we're not using real data. So I've created this mock provider, Evergreen Youth Services, and now let's say we've implemented the portal. It's day 1, and so I'm going to add a vendor admin because I want that person to be able to log in to the portal. And you can see here it's very simple, right? It's just first and last name. You can add a middle initial or middle name if you'd like, if that would be helpful for managing. The key here is to make sure that we're really making sure that the email address that gets entered is accurate, because the email, as you'll see in just a second, the email is going to come out to that user. And if we enter it incorrectly, we'll have to make an adjustment on our side to get that updated for you. So that's really critical, making sure that email is accurate before you send the invite. And so here we'll send an invite. It'll take a few seconds. Again, this is where we're interacting between our on-prem application and going up into the cloud to send out that invite. Okay. And now I'm going to pop over to my email real quick. And so right away, I get I will get essentially 2 emails that will allow me as a new user. And again, this is only going to be necessary the first time that you log in to do the setup of your login. So you'll receive an invitation email and you'll receive a temporary password. And very straightforward, the invitation is just going to tell you you've been invited to the portal, and it will give you the link to be able to access. I'm actually going to pop back over to my Microsoft Edge browser, and I can, again, you could just click on the link. I'm going to pop up over here. I'm going to paste that in, and that will bring me to the login page for the external portal. So again, I'm going to use my email address, the one that the link was sent to. And then I'm going to go back real quick. I'm going to hop back over, and I'm going to grab my temporary password. And again, this is just a one-time process when you're setting up the account for the first time. You won't have to do this with each instance. Set up my password with temporary. Now you'll notice here on the login screen, just to kind of orient folks, this is the sign-in screen. This is the same one that you'll come back to each time. There is, as is always the case, there's also a forgot your password. So once you create your new password, and we'll take that step in just a second, obviously please make sure that you document it, that you get it down, and you're able to reference it. But if you forget the password, there is a process step whereby you can request that a link be sent to you, and just, again, standard password reset that we're all familiar with lots of other applications that we use. In fact, for most of this process, we did not build this from scratch. We're using a lot of built-in Microsoft workflows, and so these are standard workflows. They're battle tested, used by millions of people, so we're quite confident in them. I also would point out on this login page, there is a link if you need help or you want to provide feedback. So if you're finding yourself locked out and for some reason you're not able to reset the password, you can also use this link, and that will, and I'll demo it a bit later from within the application. You can actually use the link to open a form to send a request for assistance. So I'm going to, for our purposes today, again, first step, put in my email, put in the temporary password, and then it's going to bring me to a page where I need to set up my new password. So I'm going to put in my, make sure I've got my temporary password here. I believe I do. There we go. That's the temporary, and now I need to set up a new password. see. And just as always, it needs to have certain components, and it will guide you. And they need to match. So I need to enter my new password. It needs to match. Oh, we're all good. Then I can continue. The next page is going to set up multi-factor authentication. So this is your opportunity. Again, you're not going to have to do this every time. It's a one-time thing. You put in the phone number that you're going to want to receive, and you have two options. You can receive a text message, or you can actually have the service call you, and you can do it through a voice process. Like somebody just joined us. Okay, in my case, I'm going to select that I would like a text message. So I send that request off. I get the code. Type that in. And I'm in. So let me pause there for a second. Are there any questions? Again, we expect this is a workflow that's quite familiar to most folks, but just want to see if there are any questions before I move on. One thing I might mention, we did have this, it's only happened once that I can recall, but if on the day that you are setting up your initial login, if for some reason you don't receive either of the emails, or maybe you receive one of the emails but not the other, please make sure to check your spam folder. We did have at least one instance where an email was directed to a spam folder. And before you start, ringing the bell going, hey, this isn't working, please do check that spam folder and see if that email was directed there. All right, so I'm going to move on. We are now in the external portal, and I just want to orient you a little bit to that portal. We've got the My Youth view. We have a My MSPRs, My Engagements, and then we've got a series of all views. So we'll walk through what those mean. The other difference I want to call out here, and I also want to mention, we have a user guide that includes a walkthrough of all of this information. We'll be providing that user guide out to you just as soon as we implement. So a lot of the information that we're talking about today, some of the rules, validations, how does the access process work, all of that is also documented in the user guide and will be available to reference. So the primary difference, if I'm a vendor administrator versus if I'm a coach, when I log in, is that the vendor administrators will see this one additional tab at the bottom of the page for staff. And again, as a vendor administrator, on day one, once you have gotten access to the page, then this is the process by which you will add your staff. So you can see here when I come, now that I've added myself, I'm listed here, Western Cedar. And then if I need to add my coaches, again, it's just as simple as clicking the button, entering that basic information, paying attention to the email to make sure the email is correct, and sending off the link. And if you need to, if for some reason you have a coach who says, hey, I didn't get it, the link didn't come through, you can, through the actions menu over here, you can re-invite, you can resend the link to that coach. All right, so one thing I would also mention, if you need, you can see here, adding coach is the only option. If you need to add a new vendor administrator, or you need to change someone's role from coach to vendor administrator, please do contact the youth transitions team, and then we'll assist in getting that done. So adding somebody new as a vendor administrator does have to happen from the youth transition side, from the admin portal. Coaches, however, can be added from the staff view here on the external portal. All right, so I'm going to walk through each of these views and kind of talk through them. I'm actually going to start with the all youth and all MSPR, all engagements views, and then I'm going to go back up to the My views. So these views are really intended to provide an opportunity especially these all youth views, they allow anybody who has access to the portal, who works for the agency, to see the information for all of the youth who are being served, right? So the real difference between the my and the all is assignment. If I'm assigned to a youth, they're going to appear up here. If they're not, as you could see a moment ago, when I went to the my youth view, there was nothing there. That's because I'm not assigned to any of those youth. But when I go to all youth, I can see everybody. And again, this is all mocked up data, of course. At this view, the all youth view, I can, of course, see the youth's name, their status, their person ID, which I think we've talked about this on the external side, may not mean as much to you, but it could be something you can use if you're referencing or talking with youth transitions team. The date of birth, including the actual age, which is included as an integer or a number in parentheses. And you can see that we actually have a little function that's built in here. So when a youth reaches the age of 23, so between the age of 23 and 24 for that year, they will display this little warning icon, which if you hover over it, tells you that the youth is getting close, right? They're getting close to aging out of eligibility. There's an indicator if an MSPR is due, and then we also have an assigned coach column, which can indicate to you whether or not we've got folks who are assigned. In the all MSPRs view, you'll be able to see at a glance all of the MSPRs that are associated with the entire agency. So again, it's a global view. You'll be able, using the MSPR view, you'll be able to set a date range. If you just, for example, wanted to see the MSPRs for a certain month, you could set that here. And in just a second, I'll kind of walk through some of the other functions of these grids, these tables that we've implemented in this application, and kind of look at some of the options that you have there. And then we have the all engagements view. And engagement, when we say that term, I just want to define that term a little bit. What we mean by engagement essentially is the larger period of time that a youth is working with a vendor. And so that engagement may last only a month or two if they don't really engage, or, as I understand it, we understand it from working with Kelly and her team, it could be a year or more than a year that a youth is working with a vendor. And during that period of time, during that engagement period, there are, of course, multiple MSPRs that are associated with that one period or instance of engagement. And so this view allows you to see things like the referral date or enrollment date or when that engagement ended. Now, this data is entered on the YT side, on the admin side, but it will display here in the external portal. And then you also have some functionality here that you can see as an administrator, for example, you could see at a glance that, oh, I've got 6 kids, but 4 of them don't have an active coach assigned. I need to adjust that. And this is actually the tab or the view where you can do something about that. So for example, with Blueberry here, if I want to assign a coach, I can just click on the little pencil icon, and then I can select my coach. And again, this list will just display all of the folks who are listed as coaches on the staff tab, right? So right now I just have 2. Once you add your coaches, you'll be able to select from any of those folks. I can save that, it updates right away. And now, if I go to my youth, now I see that kiddo appearing. So let me pop up there. So again, really the difference between the My Youth, the My MSPRs, the My Engagements view is just the difference between assignment and not having an assignment. And one thing I want to mention is that we designed this very specifically so that anyone who has access, again, whether you be a vendor administrator or a coach, can create and submit an MSPR. You don't have to be assigned to the youth to be able to create and submit an MSPR. So if you have somebody who is assigned to one staff member, but oh gosh, that person is on vacation for a couple of weeks, or maybe they've had to take a leave, or they're just not available that day. Even if you're not assigned to that youth, you can still always go to the all youth view and find that youth and create work for that youth. So on the My Youth view, again, I can see at a glance information about those youth, whether they're active, age, whether they have an MSPR due. On the MSPR view, I'll be able to see MSPRs that I've created for that youth. And then on the My Engagements view, same thing. I'll be able to see what was the referral date, when did we enroll them. You'll also notice, if I go back to the My Youth view, if I click on the name, that will open up the youth details page. And on that youth details page, again, I can see some additional information about that specific youth. I can also, and this is information that is set on the administrative portal. When the engagement is created by the youth transitions team, they will also, if there is one, if it's not an aftercare case, they will designate who the caseworker is. So automatically then the caseworker will appear for you along with the supervisor. And if there is a courtesy caseworker assigned, that person will also appear. And then you'll be able to click on that link to send them an email, for example, directly. You'll also notice through the youth details page, this is the pathway to create an MSPR. So either through My Youth or All Youth, this is our pathway to create an MSPR. Let me pause there for just a second and also touch on how the other question that may be kind of in your mind, which is how does, for example, how does this list get populated? So on the all engagements view, right? How do we get a kid into this portal? And the answer to that is through the youth transitions, through the admin side, by whatever that current process is that your agency has set up right now with the youth transitions team. When you notify them that, hey, we've got this kiddo who is interested or may be interested in being served, they will create that engagement on the youth transitions portal after they confirm eligibility for the services. And once they create that engagement, and again, going back to that discussion we were having, or that slide I was talking about earlier, once they create that engagement, within 60 minutes, that data will appear in the external portal. So you'll see that new youth record appearing in the external portal. And then you'll be able to assign that youth to a coach, and we can begin documenting those activities. Let me just pause there for a second and see if there are any questions about that. Any questions about that process? Okay, awesome, great. The other thing I would mention here, I want to take a moment and just kind of, again, talk about some of the features that we have in terms of the grids, right? So these grids that we're using are pretty easy to use, pretty straightforward and intuitive. So you have a number of different options. You can sort any of these columns. So I can sort the column just by clicking in the header. And you'll also notice that the little arrow will adjust, right? So if I want to adjust the sort order, I can click it once to do one sort. I can click it again to reverse that sort. And then if I click it a third time, the sort will be removed and the little arrow will disappear. I also have, and this is a feature that we're really excited about, and we think that this will help you quite a bit if you're sorting or looking at data. You can also group the data. So let's say we wanted to group, we have these 5 MSPRs, and again, you may have a much longer list as we start using this application and really getting it full of data. You will be able to grab any column. Not every column necessarily immediately lends itself to this, but you can grab any column and hold, and then you can drag it up here to the row just above and let go, and it will group by that data element that you grouped by. So here we can see that now it's grouped by status, right? So if I said, okay, I just want to see how many we have that are pending, how many we have that are validated. And again, you could set this, you could say, oh, I just want to see, for June, right? And adjust that sort if you wanted to do it that way. So there's lots of different ways to do it. You can also, of course, filter. So if I said, oh, I just want to see for yellow banana, now that adds that filter. So I've got a group set, I've got a filter set, I've got a sort set, and all of that is there. The other thing that's really nice about this is that you can then, from here, you can open, let's say you're looking at this MSPR record, and then you can go back and those settings will remain. So if if you've set, you've grouped and you've filtered and you've set and you've got the list just the way you like it, you can then work through a list, opening those records, checking details, coming back, and you don't have to set those things again and again and again. That's been something we've heard on other applications that we built. It's really frustrating, and so we're trying to make sure that just coming out of the gate, we've got that set. So those will remain in place until you clear them. So to clear a filter, for example, I just would click on the little icon and click clear. And if I want to get rid of this group, I can just click on the little X, and that'll return back to the original view. The other thing, of course, that you can control is that you can change the number of items that appear per page. It sort of defaults to 15. One thing to note is that it shouldn't make too much of a difference, but if you set this to 1,000, that means it's loading 1,000 records every time you load the screen, right? So that is going to have a bit of an impact on performance, just to kind of keep that in mind. But some people have said to us, I'd rather have it be at 50. Totally up to you. The other thing, I'll try and demo it in just a little bit. The other thing I'd mention again with the grouping, when we have life skills MSPRs, we'll also be including data about how many minutes have been included and whether it's life skills plus or it's life skills basic. And again, you could group by MSPR type, and then you can also sort, and it will also sum the number of minutes per group for you. So again, it may be a nice tool, hopefully a nice tool for you in terms of monthly reconciliation or just tracking of data.
Gabe, could you demo validated and MSPR type so they could see how maybe that would work?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, so you're talking about validated as being a type, or I'm sorry, a status. Is that what you mean?
Correct. And then also by MSPR type.
Yeah, we're just dragging it over and it's just going to pull those out. And then again, what we'll see is that once we start adding minutes, for example, like life skills, you'll also be able to review the totals. All right, I'm going to pop now into actually creating an MSPR, because that's, of course, the big workflow that we want to talk about. So let me pop here into... let's see, maybe I will use one of the kiddos. I'll use Chocolate Sundae, I think, just to kind of demo the overall approach. All right, so let's say we've got Chocolate Sundae. Chocolate Sundae's been working with us for some time, a couple of months, and now, or just this past month, and now we're ready to document an MSPR. So again, I'm going to get there by going either through My Youth, or if I'm not assigned to Chocolate Sundae, I can always go through All Youth, and I can pull up that youth details page, and I can create my MSPR. And I do that by just selecting my month. So in this case, I'll just select May. Again, it's one MSPR per youth per month. So there is a validation in the system that will prevent you from creating, if I create an MSPR for May, for Chocolate Sundae, and then tomorrow I come back and I try and create another MSPR for May, I'm going to get an error message or a validation saying, no, can't do that, right? So when I create an MSPR, now it brings me to the MSPR details page. And again, I can see here in the header some metadata about the youth. I can also see that there's an MSPR type column, and I can see that there's a skill building minutes and a total claim minutes section as well. So one of the things that we're going to walk through this is that we're really trying with this portal to automate as much as possible a lot of the entry, especially where we've seen a lot of errors. So for example, as you guys are aware, even things like making sure the right district or contract or case ID is selected, all of that is automated. That was all input when we input the engagement on the youth transition side and populated it on the external portal. And now when it comes to determining what type of MSPR we're going to be submitting or how many minutes are being claimed, that's also going to be automated and handled for you by the application. So again, really as a coach or as somebody who's completing the documentation, you can really reserve your time and energy towards making sure the narrative is really meeting the contractual obligations and it's really addressing how the activities align with the youth's goals. So if I'm coming in here as a coach and I'm wanting to document my MSPR, I'm just going to start by adding an MSPR service. And that just pops up a little what's called a modal window or a little pop-up window. And I've got 3 options here. And I'm going to walk through each one. I'll start with engagement effort only. So if I am doing an engagement effort, now I'm going to be asked, okay, how did you try and contact that person? Let's say it was a text message. And I'm going to do a date. I'll say I tried to contact them on the 1st. And you can see here that a little asterisk indicates, of course, that this is a required field. These are all required fields, including the narrative. Now, if I click here in the field, it will also give me what's called sort of guiding text to describe what did you do and what was the result, right? And I can then enter my text. Oops. And it does also include spell check. The other thing that you'll note is that there is sort of a standing message when you select engagement effort only, that there have to be 3 distinct engagement effort only services logged in order to submit an engagement effort only MSPR, right? So if I come in and I save this, and now it will populate here, I've got it documented. But if I was to try and submit this MSPR, I get a validation message saying MSPR services have not been entered, or there's an insufficient number of engagement effort only services. 3 are required to submit an MSPR, right? So I'm not going to be able to proceed. I'm not going to be able to submit that MSPR to the YT team, where they would have to then turn around, send it back and say, hey, sorry, you didn't quite do enough. The other thing you'll notice here is that the life skills and the group services are grouped together on one tab, and the engagement effort only services are grouped on another tab. So something just to note. If I, let's say, was documenting a group, now once I select that, now I'm asked, okay, well, which federal service category did this pertain to? And which subcategory? And again, these menus, if I select academic support, it's going to automatically drive which subcategory is presented to me. I can then indicate the date of the group and the location. And I can indicate whether or not a leadership opportunity was provided. In this case, I'll select it just to show you what that looks like. Now, again, all of these fields are required. Once I click engagement narrative, you can see, again, I'm given some helping text here. Please describe the group workshop or experiential learning event, at least 90 minutes, including the delivered skill building activities. And then, because I selected leadership opportunity being provided, there's a second section about describing how the young person was prepared and supported during the leadership opportunity. And then I can begin to type, right? And that helping text will go away. But if I hover over the label here, I can get it back and I can, what was it they wanted me to talk about? Okay, I can just hover here and I can see that and give that guidance. We do limit the narrative for all of the service types to 1,800 characters, which is about 2 or 3 paragraphs of text. So again, we're not looking for frustrated novelists here. We're looking for concise but clear and thorough narratives around the activities that were provided and how they supported the youth. So I'll save that. There's an example of a group. And then what you'll notice is that as I select these services, the MSPR type is automatically updating. So previously it was engagement effort only. Now that I've added a group service, it moves to group. And then we'll do the last one, skill building, very similar to the group. If I select my categories, select my date, face-to-face contact. The only significant difference with life skills is I need to enter my face-to-face minutes. How long did I spend, excuse me, with this kiddo? So I'll say 75 minutes. No leadership provided. If I click in the narrative, again, I get some guiding text, which is specific to the skill building that I provided. I enter that, I save it, and now we see that the MSPR type has updated again, right? In the user guide that'll be distributed as we deploy, there's a, again, this is described in detail, including a chart that includes all the rules about how those MSPRs are derived. The other thing that you'll notice is that we also derive the total number of skill building minutes compared to the total claimed minutes. So in this case, the total claim minutes was 75, which falls, kind of gets rounded down from a skill building perspective. If it's between 60 and 89, it gets set to 60, which makes it an ILP basic. If it's above 90, we would move to plus. If it's below 60, this would actually be listed as an attempted life skills. And this number, the skill building minutes, would be set to 0. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions about that. Or Kelly, if you had anything you wanted to include or add there.
There was a question in the chat
Oh, thank
asking
you.
if additional service category fields have been added. And how would you be expected to code an experiential group if it does not necessarily pertain? I'll just say it has to. It has any skill building activity documented by a provider has to go under one of the federal categories. If you ever need support figuring out which category it should go under, feel free to reach out to us. That's something we could help with.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, great. So again, this is hopefully this is relatively straightforward and intuitive for you, right? This is how the services are added. So you're just going along. You know, I think ideally what we'd love to see is that you're creating a pending MSPR each month for the youth that you're serving, and then throughout the month you're just coming in and you're updating that. So when you create those pending MSPRs, that is visible to the YT team on their portal. And that'll be a good source of information for them to be able to see like, oh, okay, it looks like they are engaging with this youth. It looks like that is happening versus waiting till the end of the month or maybe even into the following month to then come in, create the MSPR, document the activities. Totally up to you. I don't know. And again, Kelly, you can correct me if I'm wrong. You know, obviously it's a preference, but I don't think it's something that we're requiring that folks do. But ideally, that would give the most up-to-date information if you can come in and kind of update this during the month and continue to add information.
Yeah, that would be ideal, but not required.
Right. So then we'll look at, okay, so once I've entered all of my information, okay,
Hey, Gabe,
great.
can you pause for just 1 second? Shannon, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
I just had a quick question for you, Kelly. So on the minutes, like in the portal, like, which is cool, like he entered the 75 minutes, but then obviously we only get paid for the 60. So right now, what we've been doing is like if one of my, you know, coaches meets for an hour and 15 minutes on our Excel spreadsheet, we're just claiming that hour. So do you want us to actually show the real minutes that, like, is it
Yeah,
beneficial
so
to do that?
I think you've been present when this has happened a couple of times, Shannon. But you know, when people say, well, I spent 6 hours with the youth and you don't pay for that. Well, while that's completely accurate, we do not, we still want to capture all the time,
Mhm.
right? We've always had all these anecdotal stories about what providers do, but we've never had any data for it.
Okay.
So even if you're working with a 14-year-old and you spend 2 hours, we want to be able to see all that data.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. We
So
just weren't
billing
doing
is
it.
one thing, right? Like that's what's allowable. That's what's like for a 14-year-old, it's like no matter what minutes you enter, it's always going to default to 60 because that's all they can get, right?
Correct. Yes.
So that's what Gabe was trying to say. Like, we're hoping the system is smart enough to capture the nuance that I think providers have always wanted us to be able to capture.
Mhm.
But it'll still help with the billing side of things too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great. All right. So after you've documented your monthly activities and you've reviewed the information to make sure it looks right, then the next step would be to submit the MSPR. And that's very straightforward, just clicking the submit button. Now, you'll always be asked, is this a final or closing MSPR for this youth? You'll be asked each time every month when you submit, and you can just say yes or no. If I say yes, then I will also be asked to provide that narrative. And again, there's some guiding text, right? What are we looking for in that narrative summary, which you can always access again if once you start typing, right? I document my final narrative. Let's say I'm wrapping up with this kiddo, and then I can submit my MSPR. And what you'll notice now is that the status moves from pending to submitted under review. So there are a total of 6 statuses that an MSPR can be in. And again, this is all, there's a little flow chart in your user guide. It's all laid out there. But when an MSPR is first created, it is just in the pending status, right? It's just waiting for information to be submitted. When you have submitted it, it moves to that submitted under review. And the crucial distinction here is that depending on the status, you may or may not have the ability to edit the MSPR, right? So while it's in pending status in the external portal, you as the coach or the administrator who's documenting information, you can edit the MSPR. Once it gets kind of passed over the fence to the YT team, it is no longer editable by the coach or by the vendor. To be clear, though, the YT team also cannot edit, right? So any changes to the MSPR, which is your documents, your documentation, are going to be made by you. It just depends on what the status is. So a couple of scenarios come to mind. One is you submit something and you thought everything was good. You click submit, you send it over the fence, and then 10 minutes later you realize, oh, I forgot there was that group that kid did come to the group. What you can do in that case is just contact your youth transitions support staff member and ask them to send it back, right? So they will take it on their side from the submitted status and they will set it to a returned status, which means they send it back to you. And then you'll be able to edit, make adjustments, add a new service if you need to. The other statuses also are once something has been submitted and it's been validated, that means it has been approved by ODHS and it has been finalized, can't be changed or edited. There's also a denied status if for some reason we just can't get to a place where we can approve an MSPR. And then the last or the sixth status is canceled, and that is possible by voiding the MSPR. So at this stage,
and if MSPRs are returned by Jessica, Jared, or Rachel, it'll have a reason why it was returned.
Yeah, I'm just about to demo that. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, perfect.
So again, you've submitted it. I'm just going to hop back over here to the to the administrative view. And again, they look very similar, so I realize it sometimes can be a little bit hard to tell. But over here on the admin side, as soon as you, and we are in a test environment, so it takes a second for this to come through. But it's basically instantaneous with the MSPR data. So again, here's Chocolate Sundae, here's that MSPR. And now on the admin side, the next step in the process is that they will pull it up. They can see that it's in that submitted status. Again, they cannot edit the information that you submitted. They can only review. If for some reason, again, let's say this was literally the narrative that I submitted, right? Here's what I did. Not sufficient, right? So they would be able to select return. And then, as Kelly mentioned just a moment ago, they will then be able to, they can select multiple reasons. They can certainly indicate, this documentation was not sufficient. And then, they will also provide some narrative. And when they save that, now again, that's going to update the status to that returned status. If I pop back over and I take a look, now I can see, and I got this nice, and we're hoping this is handy for folks. We've got this nice big red notification saying, hey, this has been returned. And you'll actually see this on not only the My Youth view, but also in the all MSPRs view, right? So if I'm an administrator and I'm looking at all of the MSPRs for my agency, I can see at a glance, oh my gosh, we've got one that's been returned, right? So I'm going to pop back here for a second. Now at this level, I can click on this. Is actually like a little button. I can click here and I can see the narrative. And then if I drill down further, kind of back into that MSPR view, and I click on the button, I can actually see all of the information, including the reason that was selected and the narrative that was provided. Now, one thing I'll mention here, we're hoping this is not a scenario that happens very often, but if we have, the system currently is designed to maintain the most recent return reasons and narrative. So for example, if you submitted an MSPR, it was returned with a reason and a narrative by the YT program, you update it, you resubmit, it gets returned again. You'll only be able to see the most recent, the second set of return reason and narrative. It's not going to maintain the original. Okay, so that is, you could say, a limitation. I think our hope is that it's going to be rare that you'll have an MSPR that gets returned twice. But just to keep that in mind, the system does not maintain the full history of the return reasons. So again, once this has been returned to you, you'll have the option of editing. Any of the services that are here, you'll be able to edit them, which just pulls back up, right, that same page. You can also add a new service if you need to, and then you can make adjustments. You can resubmit the MSPR, and at that point, hopefully it meets all the requirements. And on the administrative side, the YT team then can set the MSPR to validated. When they set it to validated, and again, we're hoping this will be a nice feature that you guys will like. When they do that, that is going to automatically make the MSPR document and documentation available to the child welfare caseworker. It will send them an automated email to say, hey, there's a new MSPR that's been for this youth that's been approved by the YT team, and here's a link, and they'll actually be able to access the MSPR document through the ORCIDS application. So there's no need to separately send the caseworker the documentation. It'll just be handled on an automated basis through the system. All right, I want to touch
Can I say one thing?
Of course.
If you're looking at a young person and you're like, that's not their caseworker, or that caseworker quit, or any of the scenarios that we run into all the time, please let us know. We can update that.
Yeah, it's a great point. All right, let's see. I wanted to demonstrate also a couple of additional.
Oh, wait, Gabe, I have one more thing.
Of course.
So if you have a caseworker frantically trying to find reports and is bothering you about that, all you'd have to say is it's in orchids, look in orchids. Because even if they're not getting the generated email because they're not listed as the primary in this portal, it still is ending up in the file cabinet in orchids.
That's correct. That's absolutely true. Yeah. All right. I do want to demonstrate a couple of additional validations with regard to the MSPRs. So one other thing I wanted to mention here, we look at red raspberry. Again, the big part of this effort is about data quality, making sure that we're getting those MSPRs, they're not violating the contract rules. So here for red raspberry, we've got an engagement efforts only for a first month and a second month. So basically for April and May, we've done engagement efforts. Now for June, if I've created another engagement effort for red raspberry, and I've only done engagement efforts, I wasn't able to get them to come to a group, I wasn't able to do any services, and I try and submit that MSPR, I'm going to be blocked from doing so. I'm not going to be able to submit for that youth because the 2 previous MSPR months were both engagement effort only, if that makes sense. The system is looking essentially at the most recent month to make that determination, and we've tested this pretty extensively, and it appears to be meeting the requirements. Again, we're hopeful that this will help to reduce the number of MSPRs that have to be returned as not being adequate. I also wanted to demonstrate, let's see, I've got one with, I think we've got one here. Oh, yes.
Hey, Gabe, we have a
Yeah.
question from Chelsea. She
Please.
asked, did I miss the part about adding multiple service areas to one MSPR? So Chelsea, are you saying you didn't see the part where he added an EEO, a group, and then a life skills all in one MSPR?
No, I'm talking about if just for the skill building, we had multiple areas.
Yeah,
Oh, like
please.
multiple skill building services.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can add multiple services. Yeah, you can add as many as you like. You just add a new service, right? You're going to select skill building, and then you would just fill that out, save it, and then you'll just add another one.
Then you can just
And
add. Okay.
it will total the minutes, right? So if you added 60 minutes for one and 60 minutes for another, it will appear to say, 120 total claim minutes. It will total that automatically and derive the skill building total. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. So I was going to create one really quick for berry blue. So we noticed that berry blue is 14, right? We actually, I was demoing this for some of our testers the other day, and I had totally forgotten about this. And so we were puzzling over a little bit. But what I'll demonstrate here with Berry Blue, who is a 14-year-old, is that if I come in and I select skill building, and again, I'm just picking things at random. Doesn't matter. Okay, so if let's say with skill building, let's say I say, oh, I met with this kiddo for 100 minutes, right, which falls into the plus category, and then I enter my narrative, and gosh, I spent a lot of time with this kiddo. But this kiddo is 14, so it's going to automatically keep that kiddo to ILP basic because they're not eligible for plus. Now, one thing we did talk about earlier this week was, it might make sense, and we may try and add this in a later enhancement, make it very clear as to why that's happening. Because when I looked at this earlier this week, I was like, there must be a problem with the system. No, the system is working correctly. We may need to make a little enhancement to make that clear. But just so that kind of call that out, again, this is an example of the system kind of using an automated process to enforce those requirements. All right, we are running close on time. So I'm going to stop for a second, see if there's any additional questions. And again, this is what I've demonstrated for you so far this morning is, again, once you log in, day one, we're going to be getting access. We're going to be sending those out to the administrators. Those administrators will come to the staff tab and add their coaches. The coaches can then go to the engagements tab and they can assign themselves, or the administrators, if you prefer, can assign the coaches to the youth. And once that happens, then those youth will start to show up in the My Youth and the My MSPRs and the My Engagements. And again, any youth who we have previously received an Excel-based MSPR, we will have that data already right in the portal. So you'll see that youth record, you'll see an engagement record, you'll see the MSPR data for those youth. So the scenario where you may need to reach out to the YT team would be, let's say we picked up a kiddo in June, and you've communicated with the YT staff, but we haven't actually submitted an MSPR yet. That youth, that engagement will need to be added on the YT side, the admin portal side, for that youth to show up here in the external portal. All right. I'm going to pop back over to my PowerPoint. See if this works again with our. Oh, there it is. Okay, pop back over. Okay. While this is pulling up, any feedback on what you've seen so far? Does it seem fairly simple and intuitive? Do you have concerns?
One of the concerns noted in the chat, Gabe, which I imagine you'll talk about here in a second,
Sure.
is how, like, they're so used to having kind of these reports and hard files and things like that.
Sure.
So the question was, will there be a way for us to print MSPRs out as PDFs if we want to add them to a hard file?
Not in the current implementation of the portal, no. It's not currently going to be deployed. That is something we could consider as a future enhancement. And I will, to your point, Kelly, I will talk in just a second about some of the other things that we have coming down the road, including exporting of data, but no, printing an MSPR document is not currently supported in the portal.
And it would be kind of duplicative because you'll have access to the information within the portal ongoing, even if it is historical. So we're hoping you don't have the need to put it in a hard file, but we know that has been practice.
Yeah, and it looks like there's a question about whether you could do a screenshot. Yes, certainly you can take screenshots if that's something that you would want to do. Sure. All right. A couple things to point out, known issues or issues that I just want to kind of warn folks about. Again, this is our first implementation. We'll continue to make enhancements and adjustments to it. We have about 16,000 MSPR records that have been submitted so far through the temporary process using the Excel files. All of those have been uploaded. We attempted to do a conversion of all of those, and we did do a conversion, but in doing so, with about a small portion of those, about 3,000 of those records, we weren't able to derive the MSPR type just based on data quality issues or other problems with the files. And so those MSPRs will show up in the portal. These are basically the historical data that's being imported as unknown MSPR type. So if for some reason you look in and you see that an MSPR that's listed as unknown, that is the reason. We also have noted through our testing, it was not significant enough to prevent us from moving forward, but we have noted that on different views in the portal, so for example, like the My Youth versus the All Youth, or the My MSPRs versus the All MSPRs, in some cases, the way that the denied or the statuses appear, those big red buttons versus just text, can be a little inconsistent. And so that is something that we'll work to address in a maintenance release. And then we also did get some feedback from users about filtering, some of our testers, for example, and we're aware that the filtering on that column, so for example, it gives the date, right, the date of birth as a month, day, year. It also gives you the age in parentheses, but you can't filter on the integer, on the age in parentheses. You can only filter on the date. So that's something that we'll take a look at as well as we move forward in terms of hoping to make that a little simpler. Let's see, Oliver, is there a way of documenting in the system when a service isn't provided? A negative. For example, if you reach out 2 times, respond to your second contact, saying they're too busy, they won't be able to meet with you. Is there a way to document that? So you mean in a month you had 2 contacts, but not 3? Is that right? Okay, and maybe I can toss that one to Kelly. The system does not allow you to submit an MSPR in that scenario.
Correct.
I don't know if that helps, Oliver, if you have a follow-up question. Thank you. Okay. All right, we're just about at time, so I want to wrap us up here with a few last slides. So again, I want to reiterate day 1 activities. Once we're able to implement this portal, the youth transition staff, the day that we implement, will start to enter the folks who have been identified as vendor administrators for each agency, and that will generate those emails out to you so that you can establish yourself on your agency's external portal. Once you're in, then please, as soon as you're able, doesn't necessarily have to be day 1, but probably should be, or within the first week, go ahead and add your coaches so that they can get themselves set up. And then the coaches, or however you want to work it out, the coaches or the administrator can also go ahead and assign assign folks to those engagement records so that the data will then show up in the my views, my youth, my MSPRs, my engagements. At the same time, the youth transition staff will also be working on their side to make sure that the caseworker information is updated on the existing engagements. It may take a little bit longer, probably won't happen all of them on day 1, but that'll be an area they'll be focusing on. And then very important, to make sure this is clear, you will not, once we implement this portal, you will no longer be able to submit the Excel-based MSPR records, even for a prior period that has already occurred. You'll have to re-enter that data. And I realize that may be a challenge or a little frustrating for some folks. I do apologize, but there's no way for us to maintain both systems simultaneously. So if you essentially, once the portal goes live, if you have an MSPR that has not yet been submitted to the YT team and which they have not completed, validated, uploaded through the temporary process, you will need to re-enter that using the portal. Any questions about that? Okay. Last couple things. We are targeting next Tuesday, July 1st. That could slip. We are still doing some final testing, making sure that everything's, again, we've got 3 different systems that are kind of connected here with a lot of complicated data syncing. So we are testing and retesting to make sure that that stuff is all working correctly. If we are going to go on the 1st, or if we are going to move the date, that will be communicated. But that is our target. So hopefully, fingers crossed, all things go well. We hopefully will be deploying next Tuesday. The other thing I would mention is that we are, as soon as we complete that release, we are planning to start on a maintenance release. So with some additional functionality to bring forward to you, including the ability to document transition plan data, along with a notification when a transition plan is due for a youth. And as I mentioned, the ability to export data out of the portal. So being able to export it out. We'll also add some capabilities in the background and hopefully some additional validations. We may also have the capability, depending on how critical it is, to make some changes or enhancements. So one thing that I would certainly ask you to do over the next, let's say, several weeks, if we're able to implement very soon, or maybe the next month, as you're using the portal, take note and think about what it is that is working for you and maybe what's not working so well for you. And in the header of the portal, there is that help or feedback button, and that takes you right to a Microsoft form. And that feedback form actually it can be used for 2 purposes. One, it can be used to ask for help. So if you are having trouble, if you're stuck, if you're blocked on something, you can submit that form. You make clear that you're seeking assistance. that form will send an automated notification to everybody on my technical team. So we'll get a heads up as soon as you submit it, and we'll try and reach out to you, during, business hours, Monday through Friday. We'll try and reach out to you right away and address whatever problem you're having. Or you can use the form to also just provide feedback to say, hey, it'd be great if this column was over on this side, or gosh, it'd be nice if we could add this or that. One thing I would really love it if folks think about as they're using the portal is, again, around that filtering, around the views, trying to see data in a certain way. If there are certain filters, if you rather than having to set the filter every time, if you're like, I'd rather just have a one click. I always want to see the data in this way. I always want to see, youth who are over the age of 20, and this type of MSPR, and we could set that up as a one click. That's really good feedback for us to know as well. And you can use that feedback button to submit that. We'll review it and we'll try and build it into future changes. And so I'll say thank you. Again, we do have a user guide that covers all of this in more detail than I probably have. We'll be sending that out as soon as we deploy. And again, make sure to use that feedback button to submit information to help us to improve this experience. Any last questions before we wrap up? I know we're a few minutes over. Okay, I hope this is a positive experience as we move forward. So far, the testing folks seem to enjoy it. Again, we hope it's an intuitive and easy to use application, and it will help improve the overall efficiency of this process for you. Thanks again for taking the time this morning.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thanks all.